Today I wanted to talk about my favorite 22 rimfire rifle. This is a Browning T-bolt. This model was originally introduced in 1965 and it ran until it was discontinued in 1982. I guess what had happened was that they were curing the wood stocks with like a salt brine solution, and over time that brine was coming out through the varnish and was damaging the stocks and the action in that. So it was not a good time for the company, but they had a bunch of recalls and everything. But now Fabrique Nationale, FN, who owns Browning, decided to reissue these some years back. I don't remember exactly when. And I'm glad they did because they're very nice. I got to give FN credit. They also own Winchester's guns, and everything they've been putting out in the past decade or two under the Browning and Winchester names has just been really awesome. So this specific one was made in the Moroku factory in Japan, and any rifle or shotgun coming out of Moroku is going to be very high quality. They do a good job with that stuff. So this is instead of a normal bolt action, this is a straight pull. So on most bolt actions, after you cycle it, you then have to pull the handle down to lock the lugs in place. But this has a locking system where it's just straight forward and backwards. Now, as you can see, this specific one has a nice maple stock on it, and I'm a sucker for maple. Anytime I see a long gun with maple stock, I'm looking at it. But comes a nice checkering. This is a sporter model, which they also have in a darker walnut color. I like both. If funds would allow sometime in the future, I'd like to get a matching walnut set, you know, blonde, brunette. I love them both. But they also have like target type stocks and things like that if that's what you're into. But for my purposes of small game hunting and dispatching garden critters and that, the sporter style is really what's best for me. So you can see the muzzle crown is recessed nicely to protect the rifling there. Nicely done. They do a good job with all these. It has a tang safety, which is really visibly easy to see and work with. You know positively whether it's on safe or fire. It's got the little 10-round magazine I'll talk about in a second. But the bolt, if there's one thing I would complain about this, is that when you go to lock it in place, it requires a little bit of oomph behind it. So that's no problem for somebody that's accustomed to it. But say you're teaching a young child or something how to use one of these, it's a great rifle for that, but they would have to get used to putting a little pressure behind it to get that lock in place. But with a little practice, anybody would learn to get that lock, so it works nicely. To take out the bolt, it's just got a little depression there. You push down and the bolt comes right out for easy cleaning, and then that allows you to run your rod and patches right through there, easy access to clean. That's one of my favorite things about bolt actions. It's just the ease of cleaning and maintenance on them. There's just not a lot to go wrong, and they're awesome. So this 10-round magazine is a double helix style. So a lot of people might be familiar with the 10-round Ruger magazines that they put in their 10-22 rifles. This is a little bit similar, but with the helix style, it actually goes in like a figure 8. And it's got a little wheel right here that makes it easy to load and unload rounds. So rather than pinching your fingers trying to push one in there, you put it in there and then just turn the wheel, and that makes it easy to fill it up and then unload it easily. So I really like these. And as you saw, they fit flush there, so it's easy to carry around, doesn't snag on anything when you're walking through the woods with it. I put a loopholed fixed 4-power rimfire scope on it. You really want to get on a 22 rifle, you want a specifically labeled rimfire scope. The difference is in the parallax, because on a scope meant for a centerfire rifle, the factory is usually going to set the parallax at around 150, 165 yards, something like that, which is good for shooting large game out, out to the 300 yards or whatever that you generally hunt deer and that type of game at. But for rimfires, where you're going to keep it at under 100 yards, they generally set the parallax for 50, 60, 65 yards, somewhere in there, depending on the company. So when you're shooting at, squirrels or rabbits or something at 50 yards or less, the parallax is set to where you got nice clear vision, even if you're not perfectly lined up on the scope. If you're perfectly lined up, the parallax really isn't going to matter. That's when it's going to come into play, is when you're slightly off kilter looking through there. And that's a marksmanship issue that you can work on practicing. But having a proper rimfire scope on a rimfire rifle is really the way to go. Fixed 4-power is good. Generally on centerfire rifles, I don't like that much power. I think that's a little too much. I prefer a low end on bigger game. But when you're talking about small game like squirrels or rabbits, you want the power to coincide with the size of your target. So a fixed 4-power is nice for taking aim at 30 yards on a squirrel. It's just enough power to see what you're doing, but not too overpowered that you can't find the squirrel in your field of view. So I also like rimfire scopes in the 2 to 7 power range. I have some of those as well. So to me, those are the only two rimfire sizes I need, either a 2 to 7 variable or a fixed 4 is just fine. And there's no aftermarket magazines that are much more capacity than this, which is perfectly fine. I mean, 10 is enough. I know a lot of people, like with the Rugers, they can get the 15 and 25 round magazines, but really, you're not going to go to war with something like this, okay? I mean, unless the zombie virus starts to infect the squirrel population, which would be kind of interesting. But outside of something like that, 10-round magazines are fine. And when you're out hunting in the woods or just target shooting, it's easy to load up a few of these and throw them in your pocket and have them on you, easy to pop in and out. I also wanted to point out that the action is actually glass bedded inside the stock, and then the forend and barrel are free floated. I can actually run a dollar bill in there and it goes all the way right up to the action, so that's nicely floated in there, and then glass bedded in there. So like I said, FN did not screw around with this. It is a nicely made firearm. Now, they're not cheap, obviously. To get a 22 with this quality, you're going to pay a little bit more than you would for a cheaper one. It's not a little children's gun, beginner gun or nothing, but I would happily pay the price for one of these rather than have 3 cheapy ones. Really nicely done. I like these a lot. One nice thing about 22 firearms is that the ammunition is much cheaper to shoot than center fire, and the barrels last a lot longer with the lower pressure rounds. So it allows you to practice your fundamentals a lot, and really prepares you for your big game situations. So having something like this, I like the 2-point sling, because not only does it make it easy to carry around with you, But when you go to take shots, they're very nice for using in creating a hasty sling, where you put your arm through quickly like that, and now it gives you a much more stable point of balance to work from. And it's also good to practice if you got trees or something nearby that you can use to help stable yourself a little bit. You want to practice the situation too. I see a lot of people with bolt actions and lever actions. When they go to cycle the action, a lot of times after they go bang, they'll then unshoulder it and then come back bang and then unshoulder it. But you really want to get in the habit of keeping your shoulder in place and your cheek weld in place, so you're always staying where you need to. In cycling your action with it staying in place, all right? That way you're not breaking that cheek weld, you're not breaking that weld in your shoulder pocket, you're not taking your eyes out of the scope. It's just one of my pet peeves I see people doing a lot, and it really reduces your ability to have continuous follow-up shots that are accurate. So try to practice that, keeping yourself in place as you cycle the action. In addition to offhand standing shooting, it's worth practicing from a kneeling position, because again, you can give yourself a nice stable surface if you put your weight back on the one leg and then set yourself in sort of like a tripod position on your other leg. You can really keep yourself a nice stable setup like this to work from. The other position that's really good to practice from is from your butt. This comes in handy, especially as you're going downhill. You're walking downhill and you got to take a shot. It's easy to just sit down on your butt, and then from there, again, you can have both arms on your legs and create a nice stable platform from which to shoot and get your most accurate shots from. These are the kind of field positions you encounter, so it's worth practicing them.